Recording has
Oh,
started.
that's great. And I'd like to welcome, we're going to probably have other people join as we normally do it for later in the evening. And I'll introduce our speaker this evening. And what when couple of things that we'd like to say is if you want to chime in or discuss a point, please you raise your hand or put it in the chat room. And I'll be monitoring the chat room and bring the questions to Ryan's attention. Okay. Our presenter this evening is Ryan Uner. He has been coaching archery for 12 years and has been a mental health counselor for the past 3 years. He has a passion for taking neuroscience and applying it to help others. Tonight, he'll be teaching us about how to shift our archer's mindset from negative to positive. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. And again, if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat room or raise your hand, and we'll try to recognize that. Please go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you all logging in to this webinar. This is strengthening the mindset of the beginning archer. I do also want to emphasize that the techniques that I'm going to go over can be used with archers of any level. The goal of this is really to help make sure that our archers have a strong mindset when they're going into some pretty intense tournaments. So I'm going to go over a little bit of my own background. As Coach Phil already mentioned, I have 12 years of coaching experience, been in the sport of archery for 14 years. A lot of kind of what I'm going to be integrating in is some of my mental health background into the sport of archery. Part of that background is training in the polyvagal theory and neuroscience, which are both neuroscience oriented approaches to working with people. Also, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, as well as play therapy. All of these are different therapy modalities that I am integrating into the sport of archery in a way that's easy for you coaches and archers to implement for yourselves. So that's just a little bit of background as to who I am. I will say, I can get a little bit nerdy, so please bear with me if I get a little nerdy as we go into some of this. For the most part, you will see the PowerPoint is going to be in English and in Spanish. I will just preface, I used a program to help me with the Spanish translation. So if it is not perfect Spanish, I do apologize. The agenda for tonight, we will be looking at two different ways in which our brains process information. First is the top-down, bottom-up processing. That deals with three different sections of the brain that I will go over in just a minute. The second is left and right processing. The left hemisphere and right hemispheres of our brains serve different functions. And so we'll look at those different functions and how they work together. The goal of teaching you guys a little bit about the brain and how it works is that way you will be able to understand the techniques, not just how to implement them, but how they work as well. I know for myself personally, if I'm taught something new, I want to know how does this work? How is this beneficial? So that's why the first part of this seminar is going to be more lecture oriented, and the second part is going to be more application based. With that, if at any point you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'm more than happy to answer them. The application of these techniques to the archer, there are three different applications I'm going to be teaching you guys how to implement in your practices and how these will carry over into tournaments. One is a simple body scan that your archers would do when they're blank bailing, when they're starting to just get back into it, warm up. That's when they do this body scan, and it helps with the next two exercises. One is going to be processing between each arrow, and the other is going to be processing between each end. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into some of the brain and its functions. So, in the brain, if we look at it from the top down, there are three major sections of the brain that we look at when it comes to processing information. Now, when I use the term processing information, I want you as coaches or archers to think about when you or your archers are in the shot process. When you're shooting your arrow, maybe you have a bad arrow, maybe you have a good arrow. It's the way we process all that goes on with the form, the motions of the form, the shot, the hearing the arrow hit the target. All of that is a part of this processing. So when we look at the top down, bottom up approach, the three main sections are the prefrontal cortex or neocortex, the limbic system, and the brainstem. The prefrontal cortex, it is the front part of our brain. It is where we have our cognitions, our thoughts. This is the part of the brain that looks at if I do XYZ, ABC is going to be the result of that. So it's the cause to effect center. This part of the brain does not finish developing till earliest 28 years old to later around 35. It depends on the person with how fast it develops. It will develop closer to 28 the more active the person is in childhood and adolescence. This is the part of the brain that is the area that looks at this happened. Well, this is going to be what's going to happen next. This is where we tend to get those negative thoughts. You shoot a bad arrow. Well, great. The rest of my arrows are going to be horrible now. We don't want that thought to stick around. So I'm going to teach you guys how to go through the three different systems to help rewrite that thought. The next part is the limbic system. The limbic system is the emotion center of the brain. If you guys have ever seen the Disney movie Inside Out, those characters, those emotions, when they're in the control room, that is the limbic system. The limbic system is our survival system, not as much as the next one, but a little bit so. This is the part of the brain that goes into fight or flight. So, the high energy state, where we either need to fight our way out or run away. We tend to see this as coaches when our archers are getting really frustrated with their shot process, either at practice or on the archery range. If they stay in this limbic system, they are not able to fully rationalize how to get themselves to be shooting better. They're not going to be thinking through the form. Their thoughts are going to spiral into, well, I can't shoot right. I'm not going to shoot right. This tournament is going to go horribly wrong. We don't want that. The last part of the brain from top down, bottom up is the brain stem. The brain stem is considered the reptilian brain. It is the part of the brain that is solely survival. This is controls all the autonomic or automatic processes in the body. Those are breathing, blinking, heart rate, all that sort of stuff. It also processes sensory information. So, what is going on inside our body, it processes for us. If we are hungry, it's going to process, oh, we need food. That's going up to the neocortex, that prefrontal. You need to make yourself something to eat. So, before I move on, are there any questions or thoughts about top down, bottom up processing in the brain?
All right, looks like we don't have anything, so we'll keep moving on.
So, how this works is there is a system in our brain. It's called the reticular activating system. That part of our brain is best way to explain it, it's like a gateway between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The technique I'm going to teach you guys how to use with your archers in a few minutes here is going to help them to exercise that RAS, be able to go from being solely in that fight or flight survival to that thriving, I can logically think through what's going on, that regulated, balanced state. So we're next going to move into the left and right processing in the brain. So the left and right sides of the brain are very different in how they process information. The left side of the brain is the logical, analytical side. I like to think of it as the left side is like a filing cabinet. Has all the information, but just like a filing cabinet, it doesn't put it together. So it has all the data points, but it's not going to put it together in a way that you can make sense of it. The right side of the brain is the creative, artistic, storyteller side. So the right side of the brain takes the information from the left and creates a story out of it. So think of it like a movie. Back in the day, the movies used to be just one slide after another after another. Put those together and you have a motion picture. That's kind of similar to how the left and right sides of the brain work together. The corpus callosum is the part of the brain that bridges the left and right sides. So anything that we can do to stimulate both the left and right sides of the brain, what we call bilateral stimulation, will actually exercise the corpus callosum. You might be asking yourselves, well, what does that do for our archers? It allows the archers to take in the raw information of their shot and better process it into how can I improve for the next shot. An example I like to go over with left and right brain is imagine you are in a car. You're driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of you. You're driving, you have a passenger in the seat next to you. Both of you see this car pull out in front of you. That's the left side of the brain. Your interpretation of that may be, oh my gosh, we just almost got into an accident, but thank the Lord we did not. We're safe. Whew, that was pretty scary. Whereas the person next to you might be like, what the heck? That bleepity bleep bleep bleeper? He is such a bleeping bleep 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 bleeper face. Different reactions, that's the right side. So the right side processes the emotional components of these memories. And depending on how well they're processing, sometimes they're going to be a little bit out of sync. So that's where being able to do bilateral stimulation by stimulating both sides of the body can help us with processing. The left side of the body is controlled by the right side of the brain. The right side of the body is controlled by the left side of the brain. So anything we can do that stimulates both sides of the body will help in processing what we're going through. So with that, I do also want to check in again to make sure that there aren't any questions or any comments that anybody has before I move on.
So basically, what you're speaking towards here, Ryan, is that this is in the shot process, we talk about follow through and then feedback. And this
Mhm.
is where this is all occurring, what you're talking here.
Yes, so this is kind of that feedback portion. What this webinar is designed to do is it's designed to help the archers with that last stage of the forward, the feedback. Oftentimes, they tend to, in their own heads, go into the negatives. This techniques that I'm going to be teaching you, coaches and archers, are designed to help you be better able to give yourself positive feedback and feedback that will benefit you, not just, oh, great, I'm shooting fantastic, I'm shooting well, but how can I still improve? So, with that knowledge that we now have, I'm going to be integrating this knowledge into a couple of different techniques that you, as coaches and archers, can use in practice. And those techniques will also carry over into tournaments themselves. So, the first technique, this is a preparatory technique. I call it that because you're not necessarily going to be doing this in a tournament. The idea is this is to help the archer with two things. One, building up their body awareness of the form of archery, and to help them when they're going through the next techniques to be better able to pinpoint, is there something off in my form? Is there something off in how my body is aware of its situation? So this technique is done during blink bail. When the archer is warming up, they will typically take a couple blank bail rounds. So you'll have your archer shoot 6 arrows. Each arrow is going to focus on a different part of the body. So when they're going to go through the same exact form that you have taught them, and their mind is going to be focusing in on different parts of their body. Typically, when I do this with my clients as a mental health counselor, I start with the head and work my way down. Here we're going the opposite, and that's intentional. We're going to start with the legs. The legs are not to move during the form, they are to be steady. We start with that so that way the archer can notice their steadiness. They can notice, are the legs straight? However, we don't want the knees to lock. We want them to be relaxed but straight, calm but sturdy. Then, with the next arrow, the second arrow they shoot, they're going to go into the hips. The hips, we also don't want to move. We move at the core, not the hips. So having them focus in on the hips. Are the hips tucked in? Are they set so that way hips and legs are not going to move? Then we move into the back. The back is where that expansion is happening. The scapulae are moving towards the center of the back. They're going to really focus in on that, especially when it comes to stuff like the follow through. Then we switch to the chest. Chest is expanding out. We also want the chest to be rotating around the core. Then we move into the arms. Are the arms coming up at the same rate? Are they coming back to where they ought to be when we're anchoring? And then the last arrow is the head. Is the head facing towards the target? Are they able to have a clear mind when they're going through the shot process? So this is helpful. For one, the archers are able to better assess themselves on how they're doing with the form. And two, it helps build this body awareness. That body awareness is a part of that brain stem that we went over earlier, where we're looking at if the archer is really hungry while they're shooting, that is going to distract them from the shot process. If the archer, say, yesterday was doing a leg day at the gym and their legs are wiped, their legs are feeling it, they might have a little bit more wobbly legs. So being able to have them notice what's going on and be able to then implement strategies to not have that in the future is a part of this goal. All of it is designed to build up their confidence in their shots. Are there any questions about this technique that I just went over?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you're trying to say as you blank bailing, you have to form that idea in your head that you're starting from your foot up. You have to tell yourself, well, that we dealing with your we did the first arrow, we dealing with your legs first. How do you really actually go about it like physically? I mean, I know it's a mental training, but how do you get it incorporated? Because most, let me say, beginners archers, most persons think about just shooting. So if you're trying to incorporate that while shooting, because for instance, with me, I find before I start reading this book I talked about earlier, I find I could be at full draw and my mind was, did I unplug the stove or did I finish wiring a plug that I was doing? So my mind takes me far away from what actually is in front of me.
Yes, so that's actually where this technique is geared. It's designed to help the archer stay focused on the present moment. We know as coaches that form is everything. Form equals outcome. So if we look at that, we have to look at every part of our body is integrated into the form. The legs, the hips are that stationary rock. The chest, the back are the expanding parts of us. The arms, the head, that is where we're getting our aiming components. So the idea is the archer should already know the form well enough to be able to do the blank bail on their own. How you implement this with the archer is you say, this round of blank bail, we're going to focus in on each part of the body. And you start with these six parts. What we do is we look at, okay, you know the form, go ahead and have your shot process, but focus in on how your legs are at this time. Focus in on how your hips are. Focus on your back, your chest, your arms, your head. The idea is it helps the archer to be more aware of their form. And by focusing in on the body, we can't focus on did I turn the stove off at home? Did I leave my car keys in the car and it's running? We're focusing in on the here and now, which is where that target panic, the anxiety, cannot exist. Does that help to answer your question a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions about this technique before I move on to the next two? I'll
Yeah,
take that silence as
move
no.
on.
So we're going to go ahead and move on. The next technique, it looks initially like a lot. And when you first implement this with the archers, it takes time. However, once the archer gets into the groove of this, just like with the form, how the form becomes muscle memory, this becomes mindful memory. So there are six different stages to top down, bottom up processing. When we look at this, this is to be implemented after every arrow. You're going to start with the archer by asking them questions that I have over here to the right. So we're going to start with the negative cognition, the negative thought. What was your negative thought during or after that shot? Sometimes there may not be one. So once your archer gets more into the groove of this, you'll just ask, what was your thought during that shot? If it was negative, then you go through the whole round of processing. If not, you go through just the second half. And I'll go into that a little bit in a minute. The idea is we want to understand and organize the archer's mind. Our minds are not naturally geared in proper organization. It takes practice, and this is where neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself, comes in handy. Most of the archers will probably go into the negative thought, the negative emotion, and then they're just done for the rest of the round. This is geared to help them switch out of that. So we start with what was the thought or what was the negative thought. That is that prefrontal cortex. So we're starting up top in the higher level functions of the brain. Then we're going to go into the limbic system. What's that negative emotion? So what emotion comes with that thought? Every thought will have an emotion that comes with it. From that negative emotion, we're then going to go into how is that negative emotion affecting your body? This is where neuroscience really comes in handy. When we look at the brain and body, the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in our body, is the highway between our body and the brain. Majority of information from the body goes through the vagus nerve to the brain. It's what we call interoception, our perception of our body's safety. That and neuroception, our perception of safety in our environment. This is where that negative emotion to negative physical sensation comes in. When you have, say, a gut feeling that something's going to go wrong, that is actually your body picking up on something's off in the environment and communicating that to the brain. So we go into this negative physical sensation, which that sort of questions can be, where do you feel that negative emotion in your body? What does it feel like? Now, this is where that previous technique of body awareness, that body scan, comes in handy. For me, I'll give an example to make this a little bit easier for some people to understand, because I know this can be a difficult kind of thing for us to grasp at times. When I'm driving down the highway and I see a cop pull behind me, I'm doing nothing wrong. But my mind goes into the negative thought of, what did I do wrong? Was I speeding? Did I not have my turn signal on? What's going on? That's the negative cognition. The negative emotion is, I'm afraid right now because I might get pulled over. I'm not going to get pulled over, but that's how it is. The negative physical sensation that comes with that fear, with that anxiety, is a jolt of energy in my arms and legs, where I feel like I've just run 100-meter dash in less than 10 seconds. I am like, whoa, okay, body, we don't need to be feeling that. I didn't do anything wrong. So that's kind of how the negative cognition, emotion, and physical sensation come about and how they're integrated together. What we want is between each arrow, we want to ask the archers, what was the thought during that shot? If they had a poor shot, okay, what's the emotion? Sometimes that emotion can be stuff like disappointment or I'm not measuring up. That's that negative thought. I'm disappointed in myself. The negative physical sensation can sometimes feel just like a weight on them. Then we switch it. So we turn it into a positive. So we ask, instead of that negative, heavy feeling you have, what's a positive physical sensation you would rather feel in your body? Well, if they're feeling really heavy, maybe they'd want to feel light. Or if they feel defeated, they just feel like I'm falling apart, maybe they want to feel strong. Okay, what positive emotion comes from that strong, that light feeling? So, what emotion comes from that sensation? Confidence, pride in myself. You know what? I got this. I can do this. I had a bad arrow, but every arrow is a new arrow. So it goes into that positive cognition. This will initially, when you start doing this with your archers, take time because you're actively asking these questions between each and every arrow. So they shoot an arrow, What was the thought during that shot? What was the emotion with that thought? Where do you feel that emotion in your body? What physical sensation would you rather feel in your body? What emotion comes from that? And what thought comes from that emotion? It takes time. And when you integrate this and continue this, it will get quicker and quicker and quicker. The archers I've used this technique with will often tell me the negative thought and then go straight to the positive because they are already in their heads going through negative emotion, negative physical sensation, positive physical sensation, and positive emotion. They're doing that automatically and it becomes very, very quick. So I say all of that because it is a very long-winded in appearance technique, but when it's implemented, it will go very smoothly with the archers. So are there any questions about this technique that I went over with you guys?
All right.
Okay. Sounds good. Looks like we've got some really, really sharp
Um,
archers here.
we're not here. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been reading a lot, right? So, if a negative thought, you're at full draw,
Mm-hmm.
um, let's say you're in a competition
Mm-hmm.
and you keep noticing that the partner on the same bail as you,
Mm-hmm.
um, you shot, let me say your first six ends. When
Mm-hmm.
you go down, you notice that they're always shooting better than you.
Mm.
Walking down back to the line, you will have this negative thought in your mind as I can't beat she. She's too good for me. So how
Mm.
can you interact that thought or that emotion?
Great question. So, kind of looking at not just yourself in this whole experience, but looking at the competition around you. You see somebody who is shooting, you think better than you, and then you're going into that negative thought of, I can't beat her. So then we look at, okay, that negative thought, I can't beat her. The negative emotion, what would you say, Winnie, would be the negative emotion with that thought, I can't beat her?
That negative emotion now is gonna be just shoot and just finish your end. You wouldn't put in like your best that you had up front.
So defeated. So you're feeling defeated, you're feeling you are not going to measure up. So that emotion, and this is where we like to try to use emotional language because it helps us be able to process it better. Defeated, feeling down on yourself. What, when you feel defeated, how does your body react to that? How do you feel physically? Is it, for some, kind of feels like you're just like, you got this just weight on you. Like you just cannot get off. Like, great. I'm not going to beat this person. There's no use in even trying anymore. That is where we get into shifting it. Because I don't know about you, I don't like that kind of feeling. I don't like feeling like, ugh, I feel so heavy. I feel like I'm never going to measure up to anything. Instead, we want to shift to, I can't do anything about her, but I know my shot process. I don't want to feel that heaviness. I'd rather feel light. I'd rather feel like I can just go through the motions smooth, quickly, beautifully. Well, that physical sensation of feeling energized, feeling light, that brings about I'm excited, the emotions of excitement, the emotions of confidence. I can do this. You know what? She's focusing on her shot process. I gotta focus on mine. I can't do anything about her arrows, but I can do a whole lot about mine. So I'm not going to worry about her. I'm going to just worry about myself in this. Because if I start worrying about her, that's a distraction. It's going to distract me from my shot process. I'm going to start making more mistakes, and that's just going to make her even more ahead of me. So, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to be confident in myself, and I'm going to shoot the best I know how. Is that going to help with how we can kind of implement this into the shot process?
Yes, that can help. That can help. But then when you face the reality of it, is that because let's say somebody's out there telling you you ain't no good, you don't do what you're supposed to do, or
Hmm.
you're not good enough. And then here is it, you're trying your best to be good enough, but then your good enough is not good enough.
And so that's where we really want to have this shift in mindset of I'm going to these tournaments to outdo myself. I'm not going to be first. I'm not going to be the best. I'm going to be better than I was last tournament. And with that, it takes off the pressure of I have to perform better than everybody because your biggest competition is yourself. When you stop looking at the others and start looking more at yourself, you will start to do that self-reflection of, okay, this is what I need to do to improve. Nobody else is me. Nobody else has my same pathway through archery. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to go as far as I can. And guess what? There might be people who beat me. What can I learn from that experience? If I got beaten by somebody else, what can I learn from that? Can I learn I was so focused on them that it actually affected my shot because I got distracted by focusing on their target instead of my target? Or was it they were very, very composed? They weren't focusing in on anybody else. So if I want to be as good as them, I need to start understanding how they go about shooting their tournaments. Maybe I need to focus more just on my shot process, my own outcome. Process equals outcome. If I focus on the shot process, tune everybody else out, then I'll be able to shoot even better. And so looking at the tournaments you go to not as I win or I fail, but looking at it as no matter what did I learn? That's going to be the biggest way to help yourself improve. And so the next technique I think is actually going to help a little bit, even with some of the stuff that you're bringing up, Winnie, and that some of the other coaches are probably thinking through. So this technique I have here is designed for between each arrow. You're just focused on yourself and the shot process, and you're looking at these different components to shift yourself into a more positive. Now, if you have a good shot, then you just focus in on that positive physical sensation, the positive emotion, the positive cognition. You just focus on those and re-emphasize those in your head, knowing that this next shot has nothing to do with the previous shot, but having the confidence to go in and say, I shot that 10x, I can shoot another one, no problem. And the physical sensations that I had with that shot were the proper form. So I want to make sure I'm focusing in on that to get those good shots. So the next technique, this is one where it's in between ends. So you shoot your end of archery, and then you're going to go down to the target and back. This is where some of the EMDR therapy that I talked about earlier comes in. So, briefly, EMDR therapy is a type of therapy that I have been trained in and I'm working towards certification in. It is designed initially for trauma. Trauma being any distressing event. That's a basic definition of trauma. So when you're at a tournament, you are under stress. Part of EMDR is bilateral stimulation, stimulating both sides of the body. The easiest way to stimulate both sides of the body, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, is by walking. Left foot, right foot, stimulating both sides, working out the corpus callosum. On the way to the target, you are wanting to process out the negative aspects of that end. What I mean by that is you're walking down and you're looking at, okay, here's the not so great parts of what happened that end. My follow through was a little bit off. My follow through kind of shot way up, and so my arrows are going like down. I don't really like that. But I'm going to walk to the target and I'm going to see. The reason we process the negative on the way to the target is because the target is that data. Sometimes we have scopes and stuff so we can kind of see where our arrows hit beforehand. But when we're in a tournament, going down to the target and seeing the end result, if it's a negative end result, then we've already been working on, okay, processing that negative out, get the negative out, start to look at how can we improve next round. If you had a really great round, then okay, my arrows are showing me that all those negative thoughts weren't necessary. That I actually had a really good productive round. So you go and find the evidence of those shots. And then when you're walking back, you process the positive parts of that round. And the positive parts may be, well, I know what I need to do next round to shoot a lot better. I know how to be able to do the form properly. Those parts, these different parts of the form, my anchor was just slightly off. My front shoulder was coming up a little bit on that round. Now I know, and I know that if I shoot with the correct form, all the arrows will be really strong scoring arrows. The other part of this is when we process the negative down, we then install the positive. So we take that negative part out of the memory of that round, and then we look to what is the positives. By coming back to the line to shoot, looking at the positives, we're giving ourselves a more confident framework to shoot off of. So, are there any questions or comments about this different technique?
We have a quiet bunch this evening, it looks like there, Ryan.
We do, and that's okay.
That's okay.
I'm taking this as you guys are just taking down notes, you're absorbing it all. I know I give a lot of information, so please, if there's anything that you're like, I didn't really understand this part that he said, but I kind of feel like it might not be pertinent, ask it. There are probably many other people who are not understanding this either.
Well, one of the things that while we're waiting for people to formulate their questions
Yeah.
is the discussion about when you shoot your in and then you're going down, it becomes a productive period of time for
Yes.
you to make your adjustment, okay,
Yes.
and start to do it because that's process equals outcome. As you get to the outcome and start to analyze the arrow placements and all that, okay, going back from the target, you're putting a strategy together on
Yes.
how you're going to approach your and you're going to reach into your toolbox. I like to use that word.
Yes.
That you've developed a mental processing, and so there's tools that you can be employing and should be able to work it out because we got time even when we're returning from the target. back to the shooting line. We still got a minute or so while you're waiting for the whole field to clear. And so that's when you should be, from my thought is that, and a coach, I want my archer to be strategizing what adjustments I'm going to make in my shot process or my point of aim, because many of the archers they aim off in windy conditions. I just
Mhm.
had a wonderful week working with an archer named Chumley, and he made major adjustments in the weather, and the weather was not the archer like you had mentioned. I can't beat that archer. You got to beat the weather too.
Yeah. And all that is great that you're adding in there because the idea of these techniques, they're to be additive. So they're not changing the form, they're to be additional in the form. Meaning that when you have those breaks, you're still working on things. Lisa, you have a question.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I do have a question. I was listening intently to what you were saying, and as a coach, I have been on the line where to see an archer totally throw away the toolbox, where they became so overwhelmed with the elements and what was happening around them, including looking at how others were shooting and trying to recalibrate. But what do you do when that archer no longer or is no longer utilizing those tools in the box, and they just become so frustrated that it seems like resetting is even more of a challenge because now time is running out. So how, as a coach, how do you recapture that archer?
Great question. Great question. So Lisa's question was kind of looking at when you have an archer who has kind of gone so far out of that prefrontal regulated balanced state that they forget they even have a toolbox. They don't even know where their toolbox is. When we have that, that's where you as coaches building up a supportive team can come in huge handy. When the archer tends to forget their toolbox, having people around them, their teammates, their coaches, who can step in and help remind them of those things is huge. Some more emergency techniques, as I like to call them, the techniques I went over with you already are proactive techniques designed to where if the archer is implementing these every time they shoot, between every end at practice, it'll become that mindful memory, similar to that muscle memory of the form, that they'll automatically be doing it in a tournament. But when the archer loses all of that, couple of techniques that you can have them do that won't take more than the 2 minutes sometimes we have between rounds are one of them that I like to use is notice your breathing. This is very intentional in how I say this. This is more mental health counselor coming into play here, I will admit. You say notice your breathing, not the breathe, just breathe, everything's fine. That tends to stress them out more. When you say notice your breathing and practice this with your archers at practice, we're going to just notice our breathing. What it does is it tunes them into what's going on in their body. When we go into what's going on in our body, we cannot focus on anything external. That's going more that brainstem portion. We're just focusing on the body. Can't focus on the outside environment. Can't focus on oh my gosh, my bow's not working properly. The rain is horrible. All the other archers are much more tuned in. That goes away. Focusing on the breathing. One of the techniques, and this is where breathing techniques, people say they don't work. They do if you know how to breathe properly. Why I say that is when we look at this from a neuroscience perspective, taking a long exhale, a long breath out, triggers the body to down regulate, go out of that heightened sympathetic state, that limbic system emotions are taking over, into that more regulated prefrontal thinking things through. The way it works is by exhaling, we're calming down our nervous systems. Our heart rate is going down, not as much oxygen in the lungs for the heart to pump out. So it's forcing the heart to slow down. Slowing down the body helps to slow down our brain reacting to it. Gives our brain time to fully understand the situation. Another technique that you can utilize is when there is having the conversation, okay, what's going on? What's the emotion that you're allowing to take over? Is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it embarrassment? Dialogue with that. Tell that emotion, I see you, I feel you, you are not taking over. I cannot let you take over right now. Some of those techniques will work. And the biggest thing you can do is connect with the archer. Me and Coach Phil were actually just talking about this earlier today in using the plural of we. We've got this. Okay, you had a bound round. What can we do? Collaborating with them, connecting with them when they're going into that, I can't do this, everything's going horribly wrong. They're so focused on themselves that they lose that connection. By taking just a small moment, connecting, and say, let's breathe together. What's going on right now? Okay, there's a lot of stuff. Sounds like you're a little overwhelmed. Let's take the time and focus on what can we control. Can we control the weather? No. Can we control the other archers? No. But we can control ourselves and our shot process. We can control the tools we take out of our toolbox and use. All of that can happen in less than a minute. And that's where you, as the coaches, are going to be your archer's biggest resources. And if you encourage your team to notice when another archer is getting a little out of that regulated state and come in and say, hey, let's sit down. How's it going? Doesn't sound like it's going too great. Well, you know what? What can you control? You can control yourself. You can control how you shoot. You can control your shot process. So let's just focus in on the shot process. And having them go into, okay, what's going on with my body? How are my legs doing during the shot? How's my back doing? How's my front doing? All these techniques you can then help remind them of to implement. The body scan can be great to help get them back into using the form correctly. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So, what is, there we go. Now, so that is kind of the three main techniques I had for you guys. If there are any more questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer any of those. My contact information is also at the bottom. So I know for me personally, I'll be in a training, presentation, anything like that, and I'll be like jotting down notes, like, ooh, that's really good. And then later on, I'm like, oh, well, here's a question, here's another question, here's another question. So I put my information down there for you guys to be able to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you guys are interested in me possibly doing any sort of workshops with your archers. You can email me or text or call that number. More than happy to chat with you guys.
Before
But I
you
do,
go, Ryan,
yeah,
sorry.
of course.
I have a scenario. Let's
Okay.
say you're at a competition
Hmm?
and you have a pretty young archer, and then there's another country next to you, and you hearing this coach telling their archer, don't worry with win it. because you can't shoot good. How can you, that young archer is hearing that? How
Mm.
can you like boost that person confidence while at a match?
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens. What we can do is we can, kind of going back to what I was saying with Lisa's question, connect with the archer. Say, hey, right here, right now, this is your tournament. Don't focus on what the other coach says. The other coach doesn't know you. They don't know your potential. They don't know how amazing you are. You can do this. And that other archer may have several more years on you. This is a great opportunity for you to show who you are. And if you do end up losing, what can we learn from that? And always encouraging your archers that no matter what, win, lose, anything, you are proud of them for being at that tournament, showing up, and not giving up in the middle of that tournament. That's the biggest thing that will help them. Because in the end, winning a medal, great. That's not what's going to be the big hurrah for that young archer. For that young archer is going to be having a person they respect come up and say, I am so proud of you for being in this tournament, for shooting a really hard tournament and not giving up. You've done amazing, and I'm so proud of you. So, really connecting with that archer and kind of distracting them away from those negative comments that the other coach may have made and really focusing in on this is your tournament. You can do this. Trust in yourself. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is there anything that you guys would be interested? Ah, yes, we have another question. Go for it.
Hi, good afternoon. Um, this is a kind of specific kind of question, but it's something that I've often thought about and encountered in competitions. One of the worst times for an archer in a competition is when they get eliminated from the competition. When it's basically the competition is ended for them at a point in time, whether it could be at the first round or any point. Um, and I know at that point in time, you support them, you let them feel how they're feeling.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes you give depends on the archer, you give them some space. You let them know it's okay to feel what they're feeling
Oh,
and go through feeling it. But you just reinforce with them the positives and that you are not disappointed in them and and just that you are there for them when they're ready to
yeah.
start to talk about it. So I mean that's like the technique I use in those situations. Now the unusual situation, let's call it, is the bronze medal situation.
Okay.
The archer has lost the semifinal, let's say. So their
Mhm.
tournament is done in the terms of they're not going to be the champion. They're not going to be in the gold medal match.
Mhm.
So they feel like everything is ended, just like if it was the first round or the quarterfinals. But they have a match for a gold medal in could be in a couple of minutes. Um, what would you advise technique wise um, addressing an archer? Because in some instances they can't even hear you at that point in time because they get hit with this landslide of just negativity at that point because they've just lost. And
Yes.
but you're trying to rebuild them in time for that match that's coming up right away, so that so they have a chance at another medal, but also that they could finish the tournament in a positive way. What you would advise, what methods you would advise in a situation like that?
That is a really good question. So, kind of looking at semifinal, they did not win, so they're going into the gold medal match. They kind of feel defeated, but there's still a possibility. How do you kind of get in with them and be like, hey, you still have a chance? Similar to kind of the other stuff that I was saying, connect with them first, which it sounds like you already do. and help them go through that top down, bottom up. Okay. What's your negative thought right now? What's going on for you? What's that emotion that's coming up? You probably feel kind of defeated. How does that we don't really like that feeling of defeat, do we? Is that feeling of defeat gonna help you? Not really. So what feeling physically in your body would you rather feel? You'd rather feel like first place. And here's the thing. You can still medal. Let's take this and say, you know what? I still have a chance. That's that positive thought. We're going to build that positive thought from taking that negative sensation of kind of feeling heavy and defeated to strong and confident. That emotion of confidence, that emotion of, yes, I'm excited. I can win bronze. And even looking at after the fact, say they didn't get first, didn't get second, but they got bronze, but they're kind of still feeling defeated, about to go into the medal award ceremony, having them have that dialogue with those emotions that they're feeling. The biggest thing, and this is where some people kind of look at it as like, oh, it's just a bunch of hooey fooey. It's not, it's neuroscience. People just don't understand that. Sorry, I get a little heated when people start to think like the techniques I'm saying, like, that isn't true science. I'm like, well, it is. You just don't understand it. Sorry, my nerdiness is coming in here. I apologize. With that, looking at when your archer's really going into those negative emotions, saying to them, okay, what are those negative emotions saying to you? What are you going to say back? Do those negative emotions take control, or do you? What do you need to do right now to take control of yourself and not let the disappointment, the frustration, the embarrassment take over? Those questions are designed to be focused in on the prefrontal cortex. When the archer is in that state where they're in the emotions, you don't feel like you're able to connect with them, they've kind of just distanced themselves, they've kind of put up those walls. That wall is the reticular activating system, that gateway between the prefrontal cortex, the logic center, and the limbic system, the emotion center. How we break through that is through connecting with the archer. And sometimes depends on the archer. You know your archers better than I do. Sometimes you need to give them that minute, like you said. And some of them you need to go in and be like, hey, I know you don't want to talk about this. I know you're avoiding it. But if you continue to avoid it, it's not going to help you. So, what's going on right here, right now? Knowing your archers, biggest thing you can do. And saying to them, I am here. If you need help with that dialogue between you and your emotions, I'm here for you. But yes, it can be difficult in the moment when the archer is kind of having one of those breakdowns. Connecting with them is the first step. And then setting the boundaries with them, saying boundaries with their emotions. These emotions are not going to take over. Helping them to organize their thoughts. All of the techniques I've gone over with you guys are designed to help the archer organize their thought process more effectively. Implementing these techniques in practice between every arrow, between every end, helps them in the middle of a tournament to be able to quickly shift. One of the archers I've been working with at the range in Geneva, I started working with him after an Olympic qualifying tournament. He didn't do too hot in that, and so parents reached out to me, started working with him. He's about to go back to that tournament. And I will tell you, through working these techniques with him, I have seen a true change in his thought process, not just at the range, because I've heard from the parents how this is not just helping him with archery, this is helping him in other areas of life, school, work, home life. And he is in so much of a better place going into the same tournament he did poorly at last year that it'll be incredible to see how he does. And that's because he has taken these techniques. He trusts me. He trusts the other coaches who are working with him. And because we're able to connect with him and able to re-emphasize some of these things, he has this toolbox now that even if he forgets it, he has people around who can remind him of that. So, kind of the big thing with these techniques, yes, they're for the individual archer, but making sure that your team is a team that cares for each other, that notices when each other is out of sorts, and is willing to help each other out, that is the biggest marker of a successful team. So, are there any last questions or comments before we wrap this up for the evening?
I think we've had some great questions and some thoughtful questions, and we appreciate it, Ryan. And we thank everyone who attended. And this recording will be up on the website, World Archery America's website. I want to thank Andy Neville, who has been in the background taking care of the technical side of this. And I appreciate that, Andy. Thank you. And I see all my friends and Lisa and Wynette and April. Happy birthday, April. Today's your birthday, so I want to say happy birthday.
Thank
And
you so much.
yeah, okay. So, all right, Ryan, any last words? And then I guess let's give it back to Andy.
I don't think I have anything. I just want to say thank you, coaches, so much for taking the time to be on this. Not from me, but for what you're doing for your archers. Being on these webinars is only helping you to help them. And my hope is that by you guys using these techniques with them, it's going to help them in not just archery, but in their entire life. So I thank you very much for your dedication to your archers. And you guys truly are amazing. I really hope to get to know you all a whole lot better in the future. With that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this webinar. So Andy, if you want to pause the recording, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.